Hey, how you doing, Graziano? Hi guys, how you doing? This is Rich from Rich TV Live, and I've been reporting on this coronavirus now for 8 weeks, 2 months. Is that it's just starting. That's what makes it really in 2 months. I consider it to be pretty significant. Like some people trying to act like it's not a big deal, but I think 6 countries and territories and one international conveyance, the Diamond Princess cruise ship. A lot of people. Now, there are 93,617 reported recoveries and reportedly 11,949 deaths. 290,000 people, 890, have now been cases scale is just like straight up. They're not flattening the curve. And the total deaths is straight up, which means they're not flattening the curve of coronavirus cases, which is now spread in almost 200 countries. Forget 100 countries of the world, which will be staying home, will not have any source of income other than whatever is given to them by the government. In every way, shape, or form, that is catastrophic. Now, the total cases reportedly in China in 2 months is 81,008, where it started. Apparently, they only had 41 new cases overnight, reportedly. They have a total of 3,255 deaths and 7 new deaths overnight. 71,740 people have recovered. There are 6,000 active cases and 1,927 in serious or critical condition. Now, what's concerning to me is when you move into the second country with the most cases, reportedly, is Italy at 47,021. Italy has 4,000 deaths already. Italy has 4,032 deaths and only 5,129 who have recovered. Whereas China has 3,255 deaths and 71,000 reported recoveries. Something's not right there. Either whatever is in Italy is more powerful than what's in China, or China is handling it better than Italy. Then comes Spain, which happens to neighbor my country, Portugal, where I have lots of family. And I'm starting to get really concerned because Spain has frightening number, 25,000 cases now, 3,803 cases overnight, 1,378 deaths now in Spain, including 285 deaths overnight in Spain for their biggest day of deaths in one day. Yesterday, Italy had their biggest day of deaths in one day, 627 deaths in one day. Right after Spain, right behind them is America, which was 8th spot on this list in the world. They are now 4th in the world with coronavirus cases, despite the fact people are still trying to go to the beach. People don't understand that the USA is not that far behind Spain and Italy as far as cases. Specifically, Spain, USA is only 3,000, just under 3,000, 2,600 cases behind Spain. Spain is 22,000 cases behind Italy, and Italy is 34,000 cases behind China. But China only had 41 new cases overnight. Spain had 3,803. USA had 3,325. Germany, right behind the United States with 21,000 cases, had 1,834 overnight. Germany now has 75 deaths, including 7 overnight. Then is Iran with 20,000 cases, including 966 overnight, 1,556 total deaths, including 123 deaths overnight. Then comes France with 12,000 cases, including 450 deaths. Followed by at 8,799 cases, 147 new cases overnight, and 102 deaths, including 8 overnight. Then comes Switzerland, where everybody in the world has their money. 6,186 new cases, 571 new cases overnight, including 58 deaths and 2 overnight. Then the UK, who is also doing everything they can to try to stop the flow of this virus. But I'm trying to explain this to people. And I've been trying to say this because I've been reporting on this for 2 months. And everybody needs to just stay away from each other. Everybody needs to wear masks. This is the only way we're going to be able to get through. For the world, it looks just like this. And here in Canada, we're not that far behind. My home country in Portugal now has 1,280 cases, and they're bordered with Spain. And I spoke to my mom last week, and she said just then they were in the process of closing borders. Italy was already spreading like wildfire. Spain was starting to spread like wildfire. And just then was Portugal thinking about closing borders because all the borders in Europe are open. Just drive through. That's not how you stop the spread of a virus that's contagious. You close all borders. You stop all travel. I was talking about this 2 months ago, and everybody said I was crazy. Now, it's being forced. Travel is being forced to stop. People are being forced into their homes. We could have avoided this if we just said, close all borders, nobody allow anybody from Wuhan to go anywhere else in the world. Now we're in 186 countries. The devastation is everywhere. It has now spread everywhere. So it's too late now to stop the spread. The spread has already taken place. Now the question is, how do you protect yourself from this virus that is spreading extremely quickly? Canada now has 1,087 cases, 13 deaths, including 1 overnight. We only have 14 people in Canada who have recovered. That's concerning to me. 1,087 cases, only 14 recoveries. And in Portugal, when I was speaking to my mom last week, they now have 12 deaths and they have 260 new cases overnight, 1,280 active cases, 6 deaths overnight. And when I was speaking to her last week, she wasn't as worried because there wasn't many deaths. And I said, well, what's going to stop it from spreading if people are still going to the beach? Because people were going to the beach in Portugal too. Everybody was told not to go to school. They all went to the beach. Not a smart move. So that's 8 weeks, 2 months of reporting on the coronavirus and where we're at. I can't even imagine where it's going. Thank you guys for the likes. I appreciate you guys. These are crazy times. These are really crazy times. Thank you guys for being here. What's up, Diversified? How you doing? Happy Glass. Thank you for the first like. I appreciate it, guys. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your likes. It means a lot. Graziano says, it's getting very scary here in the GTA. OPP going to hand out fines of $1,000 to those that are out in crowds, more than 10, and businesses open that are not supposed to, 10K. Yeah, man, this isn't about money, man. I mean, that's just stupid. That's just stupid. But people need to understand. Stay inside. The government's doing this for your safety. Yeah, businesses are going to die. People are going to go broke. People are going to go bankrupt. But you know what? It's better to be safe than dead. That's essentially what the government is trying to say. It's better to be safe than sorry. This is a very scary situation. It's a fluid situation. It's changing very quickly, changing very rapidly. I've been reporting on it for 2 months, and I did predict first before anyone else in the world, we'd have deaths in Canada, we'd have deaths in the States, and that it would spread to 100 countries. We now have many deaths all over the world, not just in Canada and the United States, and too many to tell you, actually. And I could tell you, but it's going to take a long time. And we're in 186 countries now, and it's frightening. It's very frightening. Feed has a big lag here, constantly buffering. Yeah, I don't know what to say about that. I apologize. How you doing? Amin says open borders in the EU is not a bad thing, but to close because of a pandemic is the right to do temporarily, prevention and containment. Yeah, but they waited too long to close them. I never said they should close borders. I'm just saying they need to close borders now. I also said that Canada needed to close their borders to the United States, and the United States needed to close their borders to Canada. And now we have that as well. Why didn't we do it sooner? Why did we wait until this spread? Now it's inside our country. Now we're going to close borders? It's already spread. It's too late now. It's a very scary situation now. The game has changed. Jason says the United States underestimates this virus, and now it's spreading like wildfire. They now have 22,708 infected and have more deaths than recovered. Yeah. Andrew says it's going to take 8 to 12 weeks before anything gets back to normal. Will things ever get back to normal? I say the only way that we get back to normal is if we have a cure. And where's the cure? The cure is not 8 weeks away. The cure is months away. As far as I'm concerned, the soonest we can expect a cure will probably be around, I know that some people, Trump has said as early as July or August. My prediction will be November, but that's just me. And that's trying to be optimistic. You can't just find a cure. You got to test it. How are you going to know whether or not people are going to have long-term effects? So the first thing they're going to do is they're going to test it on the people that are dying, people that are really ill, on a compassionate basis. But we don't know. Like, if they're testing it on animals, how do we know what the results are going to be until they... Andrew says CDC said at least 8 weeks, and the USA seems to be a little ahead of us. I don't know if they're ahead of us. They just have a much bigger population. I don't think that they're ahead of us. I think we're kind of around the same timeline. Tom says 1,147 at 10 a.m. March 21st. Yeah, it's scary to think how many people are going to get this and what it's going to do to our hospitals. I'm concerned about how it's going to lag our hospitals. And then once the hospitals can't take patients, what happens to everybody then? That's what I'm concerned about. Ryu Buddy says martial law, shoot anyone roaming the streets. Yeah, I don't think we're going there. Max says Trump hiring Kudlow was your sell signal. Kudlow is corrupt, crooked, a liar. The Trump train is effed. Main Street is even more effed. I appreciate it, Happy Glass. Thank you. John Berger Balls and French Fries says it's crazy how much cannabis industry is benefiting from this stuff. Is the cannabis industry benefiting from this? The cannabis industry does fall under essential services because it's medicine, right? Your cannabis is your medicine. It's essential services. The problem is this. They're going to have a major issue retaining workers. Who's going to want to be on the front lines of this? Who's going to want to be delivering products? Who's going to want to be trimming cannabis? Who's going to want to be rolling up pre-rolls? Who's going to want to do all this? If everybody needs to go home, that means that everybody goes home. Now, the problems. I'm just trying to think about logistically. Who's going to be working for these companies providing services? And if some of them get the coronavirus and have to go to the hospital, they're not going to be able to work. Plus, you're not going to want them at work because you don't want it to spread to other employees. This is the issue that I foresee with the cannabis companies. Yeah, they're going to be at home. People are going to be buying edibles. People are going to be buying drinks. People are going to be buying cannabis. There's no doubt. No doubt. Who's going to be working at these licensed producers and MSOs to make sure that they keep the products rolling? This is what remains to be seen. And it's only going to take time for us to be able to see what it looks like, because I don't know. Alex says, China is straight up lying. So is our government per usual. There's so much shady stuff around this, and people should look into Liber Nanotech. Wiz from Harvard was working for Wuhan. Tom Deo says, we need a whole country lockdown to slow it down. People are not taking it serious, and they're risking their lives. And they're not just risking their lives. They're potentially harming other people. And that's the sad part. People will take it serious when we start having devastation. 200 people pass away in the last 24 hours. Italy had over 600 people pass away in the last 24 hours. Trust me when I tell you, those countries right now are being devastated by this. Absolutely devastated. Big Graphic says, I have $250 to play with. What CBD stock should I invest in? CBD stocks. Well, if you want to invest in a CBD stock, I would start with probably Cardiol, CRDL. I did a video on them this week. They did really well. I'd also look at CWeb, CWEB. I'd also look at GW Pharma, GWPH. Those would probably be three of the best CBD companies I could think of off the top of my head right now. HW folded, part of this plea deal, perfect distraction. Some people going to get washed from it, though. I think a lot of people will. Andrew says, I went to a cannabis store. They are benefiting. I mean, it's the same thing as people stocking up with food, right? People are going to stock up with weed. Dylan says, rest in peace, Kenny Rogers. Yes, Kenny Rogers, famous, I guess, icon with Dolly Parton. Many, many, many very famous country songs. And may he rest in peace, passing away at 81 years old. John Berger says, but Rich, if you ask who's going to be doing all of the trimming, who's going to be delivering cannabis, the same can go for all the medical supplies too, and for the police on the streets. Someone has to do this. I agree. But just because someone has to do it doesn't mean they're going to. Would you do it? Would you go to work every day knowing that you're risking your life and you should be inside? Some people are going to do it. Don't get me wrong. There are heroes. But then there's a lot of people that are cowardly and they will just go home. Or maybe they're just being smart because we're dealing with the unknown, an invisible virus that could potentially take your life. So, how many people are going to want to continue to go outside? Trump is live right now? Well, let's listen. You know it's serious when the president's going live every single day. You know it's serious when the president is going live every single day. Yeah, he is live. Not yet. It's coming up. So as soon as they go live, we'll listen in. So I've been reporting on this. Thank you guys for the likes. I've been reporting on this for 8 weeks now, officially 2 months. And I did see this. I didn't think it was going to happen like that here. I thought we'd get a better handle of it. I'm very disappointed in our governments. I'm very, very, very disappointed in our governments that nobody took this seriously and nobody did anything to stop this until it was too late. That bothers me. That really bothers me. Bothers me a lot that we allowed it to spread and now we're trying to stop it and now everybody can't work. Everybody's being told to stay home. Our kids are at risk. Just a little bit of intelligence, just a little bit of foresight to say, hey, wow, look at what's happening in China. That's pretty terrible. Really wish that didn't happen here. To think that nobody even thought about that. That nobody even considered that what was going on in China could happen here. That's the part that really bothers me. And now, instead of protecting us by closing all the borders, stopping all travel, now we're going to close borders. Now we're going to stop travel. It's already here. It's already in our neighborhoods. It's already in our communities. It's too late to stop it now. Now all we're going to see is more devastation. All we're going to see are more people sick. All we're going to see is all underlying issues. This is going to affect everybody in a very big way. And I was speaking to one of my for you, and she's like, I go, but it's horrifying, isn't it? And she's just like, yes. That's all she could say to me. I mean, that's all she had to say to me. I already know what she's seeing. And it's sad that this could have been avoided. That's the part that's really sad. That this could have been avoided and it's not. And now we have to all deal with it. All of our businesses are gone. All of our revenues are gone. All of our savings are going to just get obliterated. We're being told that we don't have to pay bills, but then when you try to call up different banks and different institutions, you're on hold. They make you wait forever because they know the whole country's calling. Oh, can I get a bailout? Can I get a bailout? Can I get a bailout? Can I pay my credit card next month or the month after that or the month after that or in 6 months? Oh, can I pay my mortgage in 6 months? This is going to affect the banks. This is going to affect the businesses. I'm a business owner. I'm affected. A lot of you are business owners. I'm sure you're affected. We're not allowed to work. So unless you're in an essential service, you're not allowed to work. You're not allowed to work. You have to stay home. Now they're starting to give out fines for people that are outside. People that are not taking this seriously are going to start getting fined. Businesses that are starting to continuously operating that are not essential services that are being told to close, if you don't close, you will be fined. There's a reason why they're doing this. It's to prevent the spread of the virus. It's not because they want to kill your business. It's not because they want to kill my business, but it is going to kill my business and it is going to kill your business. Whether we like it or not, this is going to kill everything. However, we will, once we get past this, once we find a vaccine, once we consolidate, like we're at war, right? By staying outside, we could get slaughtered. By going inside, we're consolidating. We're taking a step back. We're consolidating to protect our people. We're consolidating to protect our future so that when we do find a vaccine, when we do find a cure and we beat this, we're able to actually go back to work, start opening up businesses again, and start generating income again and start thriving again, because we will. We will. But between now and then, the financial, economic loss is devastating. Devastating. Happy Glass says, in North Korea, only 4% of the people tested had the virus. They are doing the right thing, locking down senior centers. Yeah, and we need to follow in the footsteps of places that are having success. Eugene says, yep, it's real good. People gonna get washed. Car sales lady says the power grid is starting to reach its max with everybody at home running their lights, TV, internet, washing machines. Wait until it gets warmer and everybody puts their air conditioning on. Well, we're going to have to be smart with that. You know, we're going to have to turn our lights off. We're going to have to turn our air conditioners off. We're going to have to turn our TVs off. We're going to have to be smart. Dylan Fraser says, I've noticed less police on the road. Even police have to stay home and watch their kids. It's dangerous. It's a dangerous time for everybody, police included. Happy Glass says the herd immunity will come before the vaccine. Oh, we'll see. Jason Garza says, I have to work. I'm in critical care. We're gearing up at UTMB. Hey, man, you're a true hero, Jason. Thank you for your service. I really appreciate it. I know the people appreciate what you're doing for them, putting yourself on the line for others. A true hero on the front lines of this virus, this pandemic. Hi, Danielle. How you doing? Hope you're staying safe. Does anybody here know anybody that has the virus? Does anybody know anyone close, a friend, that has the coronavirus? Let me know what you are doing in self-isolation. Are you in self-isolation? Are you still going outside? Are you staying inside? Please let me know what you guys are doing. I'd love to hear what you guys are doing. Eugene says, yeah, you need to read Behold a Pale. Highly recommend you check it out. Thank you for sharing. Scott Norris says, we should all educate ourselves. This is the time to find what we love. Perhaps an online course, make a positive out of a negative. I agree with you, Scott. And that's what I'm going to do. And that's what I'm going to continue to do. However, we need to understand the severity of the situation. And when we're told to stay inside, we need to stay inside. It doesn't take 186 countries, 12,000 deaths, 290,000 cases for people to start realizing that this is real. And this is going to be affecting every single neighborhood, every single community, every single city, every single country in the world that doesn't close its borders. It's pretty obvious. But we're closing borders now. The infection's already in our countries, and now we're closing borders. I got news for the government. It's a little bit too late now. We need to deal with it. Whether we like it or not, we need to deal with it because it's already here. So if we stay inside, we give ourselves a chance to beat this. But a lot of people are predicting that 70% of the world is going to get it regardless. The only way we can avoid it is to stay away from people, which is really weird and eerie. Car sales lady says, this is not cool. I work at a car dealership and we are still open. Nobody is buying cars right now. It just doesn't make sense. They're afraid to close the doors because they realize that that's their business shutting down. You're going to continuously pay rent when you're not making any income? How long can you do that? I mean, this is where it gets crazy. I mean, the economic fallout of this is astronomical. Nobody understands it. Every business, every landlord, every tenant is at risk. Every tenant is at risk of not being able to pay their rent because they can't go to work. Every job is at risk of being taken away because people can't go to work. Every business is at risk of going bankrupt because people are being told to go home so they can't go to work. Everything is at risk. Everybody's savings are at risk because we have no idea how long this is going to last, and everybody's got bills to pay and nobody can work, so you can't generate any income. So if you can't generate any income and you can't go to work and you can't make any money, but you still got to pay bills, what are you going to do? You're going to start eating up your savings, eating up your savings, eating up your savings just to try to stem the tide. How long is that going to last? How much savings does everybody have? How long are you going to be able to survive? I mean, these are questions that nobody has answers to because this is just the beginning here in Canada. It's just the beginning here in Canada. And last time I looked, China is still locked down. And it's March. And I started hearing about this in December. I started reporting on this in January. Now we're into March. And it's just starting here. Just starting. How are we going to react when our death toll looks like Italy? When our death toll looks like China? Well, why do you need to have the death toll be like that here to stay inside? The death toll is already frightening in Italy. It's already frightening in Spain. It's already frightening in China. And the way it's happening in the United States, it's becoming very frightening in the United States, where 8,000 New Yorkers have already been diagnosed with this virus. I hope looting doesn't start, but how are people going to not starve? How are people going to survive this? It's a very, very big issue. Jason Garza says the census at our hospital is increasing, staff being mobilized to the busier units from less busy places like elective surgery. Yeah. And this is just the beginning, Jason. Stay safe, brother, man. This is crazy. Nancy Schaefer says, thank you for sounding so doom and gloom. I appreciate that. I feel somewhat better because people around me are just now starting to take it seriously. I don't want to sound doom and gloom. I think it's great that we can stay at home. We can rest. We have a solution, which is stay at home. But I want to be realistic about where we're at so we can find a solution to how are we going to get out of this? And how are we going to move on with our lives after this? And what are we going to do in the making? And I'm sure a lot of other people are thinking. Andrew says, it's funny because now you made me not want to go out and I'm healthy. To Italy, to Spain, to America, to Canada, everybody, the UK, the whole world is being affected by this. And the entire world is effectively being shut down with the exception of essential services, plumbers, telecommunication services, utilities, markets, doctors, restaurants, media. YouTube is still going. So essential services is still going and growing. Companies like Amazon, they're hiring people. People are going to be at home ordering from Amazon. Essential services and other businesses like Zoom communications, Zoom calls, Netflix. Some businesses will flourish in a situation like this. A lot of cannabis companies potentially. That's a reality. But what about the other 75% of the world that's being told to stay home? That's the part of the world that is going to be devastated. Yes, 25% of the world will flourish in a situation like this because it's going to benefit them. Some companies, some businesses will flourish. Some businesses will decide to just stay at home full time after this because they'll realize that it's more financially feasible, viable. Some will go bankrupt. So the question is, what are you going to do to adjust to this changing world? Are you going to just sit there and wait to go bankrupt and wait to go broke and wait to run out of money? Or are you going to do something and be proactive to make sure that you're making money from home, that you're generating income from home, that you're being productive from home? For example, if you don't have any issues with money, what are you doing with yourself? Are you exercising? Are you working out? Are you reading? Are you educating yourself? Are you still developing your? And when we do come out of this, how do you intend to move on with your life? Yo, what's up, Tony? Thank you for being a member, my friend. What do I think of SPRO? Sparrow? I'm not familiar with them. I'd have to take a look. Nancy says, I would hate to be a politician right now. Pretty much lose-lose situation. I think that we could have done a much better job of dealing with this from the beginning. Is this live?
With Mitch McConnell and this tremendous spirit to get something done. So we'll see what happens. But my conversation was very good with Senator Schumer. These virus on our nation's students.
I think this is a rerun of yesterday. Why are they saying this is live? Weird. I think that this is, I don't know. I'm not getting the live stream. Trump is live right now. Let me see here. Are you guys seeing Trump live right now?
Hi, how you doing today? Thank you for joining Rich TV Live. I'm here with a very...
Oh, we're waiting. Okay, we're waiting for Trump. It's scary because the numbers in the USA are growing extremely fast. 3,000 cases overnight, 279 deaths now in the United States. Remember, United States is one of the largest populations in the world behind, I think they're the third highest population in the world, actually, behind China and India. I don't know if there's anybody else bigger than that. So we're just waiting for Donald Trump to speak. Tony Campbell says, I think America will have to consider the possibility of legalizing cannabis. It would pay for all the funding the government is handing out without tweaking the US dollar. I think that would be a great idea. Apparently, dealerships closing in Brampton and Mississauga. It's just a matter of time till everything is closed, guys. It's not an essential service. People don't need to buy cars in a time of a virus. People need to eat. People need to get medicine. People need to go to the hospital. Truckers need to move products and goods. Stores and restaurants and places like Walmart need to stay open and Costco need to stay open so we can get our essential foods and services that we need and products that we need. So plumbers, electricians, someone needs their plumbing done, plumbers need to be able to go do that. So there are essential services that are mandatory still. Those businesses will stay in business. I would say that that's probably 25% of the world. What about the other 75% of the world? That's what I'm concerned about right now. I'm concerned about humanity. How is humanity going to handle this? How are the governments going to keep everybody from panicking when people are starting to see their savings are disappearing? I want to be clear-headed about this. Oh, here we go. Here we go. Getting close to hearing from the White House. Stay tuned. Steve says, I saw it. Nancy Schaefer says, in 1918, most of America lived in rural areas and 10% of the population died. Viva Sound Channel says, a friend of mine thinks this virus just makes you cough a bit and small headache. I think he needs a better education about all this. Yeah, I think everybody does. People are dying. Take a look at the videos. I don't. Yeah, I'm just waiting for it to start. Drum Wolf 100 says, as long as countries still allow cannabis dispensaries to stay open, the can industry is a good investment right now. Everyone is staying home and getting lit. Yeah, and trying to just forget about the problems that are happening in the world. Burgo King says, yes, after all of this, the U.S. needs to federally legalize retail weed. Danielle Miller says, I'm sick of illegally buying my cannabis. It's the only bad thing that I do. Well, the LPs and the MSOs have to lower their pricing. Happy Glass says the government is issuing funds to everyone so that they do not lose their place. Just pick up where we left off, but do it better after the reset. I hope it's going to be that easy. I really. Burgo King says, hey, watch the 10 Commandments. Passover came about after a plague ravished Egypt and the Jews quarantined themselves in their homes. Better be safe than sorry, man. Danielle Miller says, you have to get the check through FEMA. Screw that. I'm not giving FEMA any of my info. That's the other issue. You have to go through hula hoops to get the money. And is everyone going to be willing to do that? My prediction is no. Eugene says, this is just another distraction to push immunization on the public, and 5G is another corporate not being talked about. Yeah, I don't want to go there. I know what you're talking about. I know what you're referring to, but I don't really want to go there for many different reasons. I'm pretty sure you understand why. We need to be smart here, and we just want to report on what's going on. We want to avoid, too much speculation. Jim says the depression will bring if this lasts too long. Jason Garza says, take your CBDs, guys. Boost your immune system. Mr. Lou says, Air Canada is looking very attractive. 3.2 billion market cap, 6 billion balance sheet. Air Canada has no business right now. I wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. But that's just me. Danielle Miller says, I think this is a Bill Gates agenda to vaccinate. It has microchips in it. That's a crazy, crazy conspiracy theory. But you never know. Mr. Lou says, bottomed at 960, currently sitting at 1240, high at 54 in December. I think that these airlines are in serious trouble, my friend, of bankruptcy protection. Nobody's traveling. You have to assume that they're going to lose a lot of money. A lot of money. So I would be careful. Mr. Lou says, after the virus, after they find a cure. Yeah, maybe then, but I wouldn't touch them right now. Alberto Ramos, thank you for being a member. Alberto says, hydroxychloroquine, the cure? I don't know. Hope we find a cure soon, though. Viva Sound Channel says, Norway government is still undecided about what to do. 2,000 plus cases, 100 new ones every day. I think it's pretty obvious what everyone needs to do. You need to shut everything down. Everybody needs to be indoors. Close your borders. Stop travel.
Thank you very much.
Oh, here's the president.
A lot of things going on. I'm going to be going over to the Hill and have a lot of meetings. And from the financial, this is a medical situation, not a financial situation. Financial, that was moving along very nicely. I want governors, mayors, businesses, charities, and citizens are all working with urgency and speed toward one common goal, which is saving American lives. We're in communication with foreign countries. It's now at 148 foreign countries. Can you believe that?
No, 186, Trump.
You talk about a spread. You talk about a
186.
spread. 148 countries.
Not 148, 186.
There's been a week of national action and of great national solidarity. People are getting along with Republicans and Democrats, and independents and liberals and conservatives, and actually it's a very nice thing to see. We're all one beautiful big American family, and that's taking place right now. Last night I approved major disaster declaration for the state of New York. worked very closely with Governor Cuomo, and this is the first time in our nation's history that a president's used the Stafford Act to declare a major disaster in response to a public health crisis. Never happened before. And considering other areas where we may or may not be doing that, and very closely with Gavin Newsom, Governor of California, and others, doing the same thing depending on their needs, depending on what they're asking for. It's been unprecedented action in New York, and we've had a tremendous federal response all over the country. And I want to thank all the people in the federal government and obviously in the state governments and local governments. We are working hard. Everybody is working hard. People sitting alongside of me are working very hard. That I can tell you. Also, to halt the entry of the Chinese virus while continuing trade and commerce. And we've had very good talks. Prime Minister Trudeau and today, this morning, with President Lopez Obrador, talked about joint measures that we're taking to prevent the spread of the virus in our countries and to temporarily suspend non-essential travel. We had a great conversation this morning, President of Mexico, and our close cooperation with Mexico and Canada will keep our people healthy, keep their people healthy, keep everybody safe. Yesterday, I had a call with 12,000 small businesses, representatives of these businesses. It's the engine of our country. People don't realize that. You read all about the big ones, but the small business, when you add them up together, are really the economic engine of our country. And I assured them that my administration is doing everything within its very considerable, all sorts of representatives and systems like the hospital system. We spoke to many of the hospital systems throughout the country, nurses and doctors, representatives representing hundreds of thousands of nurses and doctors, airlines and cruise ship companies, the Business Roundtable, which was fully attended, and it's all of the top CEOs of our country and beyond, frankly. The businessmen of, really, these are world-styled businessmen. These are businessmen that control the biggest companies in the world. Many of them have taken hits, and many of them are just going forward. Their businesses have been great. Some have been very badly affected. Some haven't been affected at all, and frankly, some are doing very well. They continue to do very well. Walmart, as an example, has been really helpful to us. Doug McMillan, head of Walmart, really helpful to us. And I assume they're doing pretty well because people are certainly buying more than even a clip at Christmas by substantial numbers. Pretty amazing, but they're doing incredibly. They put on tremendous extra staff. You don't have empty shelves. A lot of things have happened that are very good. Restaurants, fast food executives, grocery stores, all retailers, literally all of them, in groups. And we spoke with the G7 leaders. And very importantly, the religious leaders. We had a great conversation yesterday, the Vice President and myself, with the religious leaders of our country, many of the religious leaders. And we've had a number of them during the course of the last 2 weeks, actually. But yesterday we had a very significant call with the religious leaders of our country. I signed legislation providing American workers with paid sick leave. The Admiral will speak to that along with Tony. We're working quickly to pass additional legislation that will provide massive. Never did anything like we're doing on the Hill right now. They're negotiating. Mitch McConnell, Chuck Schumer, we're all up there. Kevin McCarthy, and Nancy Pelosi. We're all negotiating, and everybody's working hard, and they want to get to a solution that's the right solution. I think we're getting very close. We've also announced that we've moved taxes. Moved the date back to July 15th instead of your usual April 15th. And very importantly, you'll have a lot of time, but you're not going to have interest penalties or any kind of penalties by filing at that later date. HUD announced that foreclosures and evictions are suspended for single-family homeowners with FHA-insured mortgages for the next station, will not enforce standardized testing, which is another big deal, requirements for students in elementary through high school for the current school year, not right now, on federally held student loans, and directed that borrowers be allowed to suspend their student loan payments without penalty for at least 60 days. And we'll be talking about student loans, the students. They're under a great burden right now, so we will be talking about that further. But we're waiving during the 60-day period various elements and very important elements on student loans. They can produce and supply much-needed masks, swabs, sanitizers, ventilators, and everything else. This products company is retrofitting its manufacturing capabilities in large sections of their plants to produce masks, and they're in that process right now. And in my direction, the FDA has taken rapid steps to make these items available for medical. Very successful numbers, not just one or two, number of therapeutics, medicines that can help people that are already sick, help people not get sick. And obviously, you know about the vaccine, and Tony will discuss that a little bit later, but the vaccine is moving along. But this is something that right now, and this is what it's incredible. And what the FDA has done, and Dr. Stephen Hahn, who's highly respected, he's only been here for a couple of months, and he's gotten thrown into the swim of it, and he's really standing up. But the FDA has really moved the mountains. I said it this morning. They moved mountains to get approvals on things that maybe work. We'll find out very soon. It won't take long. An example of to make hand sanitizer. It's a big difference. And they've been unbelievable. They really, Pernod Ricard. Their first delivery will be on Tuesday. It's going to go to various states. They're going to start, I think, in New York, and they're going to work their way around. They're making a tremendous amount of hand sanitizer at a very high level, too, by the way. We've activated the National Response Coordination Center to level 1, that's your highest level. It's the nerve centers, our nation's governors. Many of you were at the call yesterday with the governors. And I think you can see the relationship. And we've had numerous calls with governors, by the way, but the relationships are pretty amazing. They're loving what we're doing, and the coordination between the federal government and the governors, states, and even local has been pretty incredible. FEMA Administrator Pete Gaynor, who is with us, will soon be providing you with an update on the center's operations. And FEMA's been incredible. We got them something which more and more people are using, and now they're really using it. And now the ones that are using it are loving it. And I think we're going to change the way our country functions medically, and probably in other ways because of what's going on right now. This will reduce the chance of infection and preserve hospital capacity, so it solves a lot of problems. Every American has a role to play in defending our nation from this sacrifice, but it's also a time to treasure our loved ones and to take stock of what is most important: our faith, our families, our neighbors. What you've done and the way you're responding has just been very special, something that we will never forget, that the history books will never forget. We're going to have a great victory. We're going to be celebrating a great victory in the not too distant future. And I just want to thank everybody. And now I'll introduce our Vice President, Mike Pence, who's led the task force. And I will tell you this, he has not slept much, maybe a tiny bit, maybe a little bit, but not much. And he's done an incredible job. Mike, thank you.
The whole of government approach, but a whole of America approach. You just heard the president describe one inspiring story after another of the way the American country, the American people are coming together. They're responding. Religious communities across this country, the American people are coming together. They're responding with common sense, compassion, and generosity. People are heeding the advice of state and local authorities, and tens of millions of Americans are putting into practice 15 days to slow the spread. we are officially, Mr. President, 6 days into our 15 days. And as we look all across this country, while we strongly support the decisions that governors in states where we have significant outbreak have taken, we encourage every American to listen to those state and local authorities. For every American, this is what you can do to make a difference over the next week and a few days to protect your health, protect your family's health, but most especially, we've almost been overwhelmed at the outpouring of support from American businesses. The president spoke yesterday to thousands of small businesses. We spoke to manufacturers yesterday. And in fact, as the president indicated, the FDA for the American people. The pastors we spoke to, we want to thank all the religious leaders from every community of faith in the country, making the hard choice to suspend. And of course, the chorus of prayers that is coming up from communities of faith around the country is making the difference that it always has in the life of this nation. One thing the president and I promised was to remind people that on the weekends that you're not in the pews, it's still a good support. The president and I are grateful that the American people are listening to state and local authorities and putting into practice all of from Admiral Guo. Testing is expanding rapidly across the United States of America. State-run drive-thrus are expanding. More than 195,000 Americans and more who have been symptomatic have been tested. That number does not include county hospitals or healthcare labs around the nation, some 15,000 in number. And among the number of the more than 195,000 that have been tested, it's important to remember that only 19,343 at this moment have tested positive for the coronavirus. We continue to urge state and local health authorities to contact FEMA for all the latest developments and innovations in testing. But we want to remind Americans, as Dr. Fauci will emphasize in a moment, if you don't have symptoms, don't do a test. It is another way that the American people can make sure that we are preserving the resources that our healthcare workers need to minister and to support those who are dealing with the coronavirus and other illnesses. In a moment, Pete Gaynor will detail the efforts at FEMA. Since the President's national emergency declaration, we have FEMA in the lead, stood up the National Response Coordination Center, as the President said, and we are working closely, literally hour by hour through FEMA, processing requests from states most impacted like New York, Washington State, and California, and we'll continue to work very, very closely with those states through the very traditional means of federal emergency management at FEMA. Secretary Carson will describe decisive actions the President alluded to bring foreclosure relief to Americans. And on the subject of supplies, in a moment, you will hear of not only the progress that we're making on testing, but on Monday, we'll be detailing for the American people the progress that we are making on the President's strategy of procuring more personal protective equipment and medical supplies, allocating them through the system of FEMA, and continuing to urge the conservation by Americans. In fact, I'm pleased to report to the President today that HHS just placed an order for we do renew our call for Americans to postpone elective medical procedures, including dental services. And remember, this is another way that you're going to make sure that medical supplies are available, because by postponing elective medical procedures, you're freeing up medical supplies for those dealing with the coronavirus. As the President mentioned, our team is on Capitol Hill as we speak, working with members of Congress in both political parties. They're making progress, by all accounts, on a bipartisan bill. They worked late into the night last night, started early this morning, and we are working to pass that legislation on Monday in both the House and the Senate. Now, on a personal note, many of you may have been made aware that a member of my staff has tested positive for the coronavirus. We learned of that late yesterday. I am pleased to report that he is doing well. He had mild cold-like symptoms for about a day and a half, has not been to the White House since Monday. Neither the president nor I had direct contact with that staff person. We worked immediately with the White House physician and the CDC. We've done all contact tracing. And while the White House doctor has indicated that he has no reason to believe that I was exposed and no need to be tested, given the unique position that I have as vice president and as the leader of the White House Coronavirus Task Force, both I and my wife will be tested for the coronavirus later this afternoon. Let me say again how grateful the president and I are that every American has acted on the president's coronavirus guidelines. We are 6 days into 15 days, and as Dr. Fauci may well reflect in a moment, is an opportunity for us here on the footholds of this epidemic curve in our country to literally lower the impact in our nation and save lives. Every American can do their part to slow the spread, and we encourage you each to continue to do that. As the president says often, remember, we're all in this together. Also remember that for most Americans, the risk of serious illness from the coronavirus remains low. The reason we want to put into practice the president's coronavirus guidelines is because no American would want to inadvertently expose someone who is vulnerable, a senior with a serious underlying health condition, to the coronavirus with a potential threat. I did hear one story this morning, Mr. President, about a senior named Geneva Wood. She actually is at the Life Care Center in Kirkland, Washington. She is not only a grandmother, she is a great-great-grandmother, 90 years young, and she tested positive for the coronavirus on March 6th. But by all accounts, she's doing well. She wanted America to know there is hope, and her strength and her enthusiasm is truly an inspiration to the nation. As the president said many times, we're going to get through this, come out stronger than ever before, and we'll get through this as Americans together. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President, Mr. Vice President. As I told you earlier last week, we are in the process and are effectively transitioning to large-scale testing by leveraging all the components of the American healthcare system. When we started, it was CDC only. Then it was the state public health laboratories. Now we're transitioning into the mainstream of American testing with many of the companies that the president invited in the Rose Garden just a week ago. So currently, 91 public health laboratories, state public health laboratories, are up and running in 50 states, the District of Columbia, Guam, and Puerto Rico. This is our curve, and I want to be members of the American Clinical Laboratory Association. These are the main reference laboratories: LabCorp, Quest, Mayo, ARUP, BioReference Labs, and Sonic Healthcare. It does not account for the well over 10,000, 15,000 hospital-based labs, many of which are doing testing, for whom we will get data this week to give you an overall roll-up. As you can see, over 195,000 people in America have completed their testing. That means tests plus results. This does not count the people whose tests are in process. And as you see, this curve is going, it will continue to rise dramatically over the next period of time. So again, this is utilizing all the components of the great American healthcare system, the state and local public health laboratories, the hospital system, which is not represented here, and the main reference laboratories. Now, I do want to make it clear that although testing is becoming more available, and Dr. Fauci will definitely emphasize this more, there are priorities for testing. And clearly, everyone across the country should understand that those hospitalized or in an ICU are a priority for testing. Symptomatic healthcare workers, for obvious reasons, we want to make sure that their health is preserved and that they are not going to spread to those who may be seriously ill. Symptomatic people in long-term care facilities. As the Vice President has highlighted, and we've said many times, elderly in our society have a much higher mortality rate, much higher serious complication rate. Symptomatic individuals over 65, symptomatic individuals who have underlying conditions like chronic heart disease or liver disease or other types of chronic diseases, patients in public health investigations, and there are local priorities around the country, particularly healthcare workers for testing. And I want to talk about the community-based testing sites. I know they're popular now because there's now an acronym, which I'm sure the Vice President doesn't appreciate, CBTS or CBT sites. We talked about these earlier in the week, and I wanted to emphasize again that these are state managed and locally executed. Federal government is there to provide support, know-how, blueprints on how to do this, but these are really springing up at dozens and dozens of sites all over the country, adapted to the local needs. Some are drive-throughs, some are walk-up, some are geared to healthcare workers and emergency responders. So again, what we see is to increase the availability of tests and the throughput of those tests. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, Mr. Vice President. What I want to do just over the next minute or so is maybe connect some of the dots of the things that you've heard today. First, the status of the dynamics of the outbreak. I mean, you all know the numbers. You've seen them. We have widespread infection, but to varying degrees throughout the country. So, for example, when you talk about the kinds of mitigation issues that we have put forth and have emphasized, just as I mentioned the other day, there are two dynamic forces that are going on at the same time. You're having the natural course of an outbreak trying to peak at a high level, and then you have the mitigation strategies which are aimed at dampening that. We've mentioned that multiple times. We often get asked, how do you know you're having an effect? Because there are two things that are going on at the same time. They may be confounding. Well, I can tell you for sure, from a public health standpoint and experience with other outbreaks, we know we are clearly having an effect, but we can't quantitate it for you accurately now, because looking forward, you'll know what the impact of the rate of these steep inclines will be. So that's why we're going to come back to you every day and keep you up to date about that. Getting with regard to the disproportionate of the response, everyone is right here. I'll get to open up the Vice President's book with his permission. This is baseline for everyone. In other words, throughout the country. But then there will be areas, and you've heard them, Washington State, California, New York City, in which the dynamics of the outbreak are clearly different and much more robust, if you want to use that word. And that's the reason why we've seen the mitigation ratcheted up in that regard. And again, hopefully, and I have confidence it will happen, you will see an impact on that. Next, getting to testing. You saw the numbers with testing. Remember, there was always an issue with testing. I think we're getting to the solution that everybody in the country is looking for. But I want to emphasize one thing that Admiral Giroir mentioned, is that not every single person in the United States needs to get tested. He gave you the priorities. I don't want to repeat them. But let me tell you one of the unintended consequences of individuals who don't need to get tested that flood the desire to get tested. Currently, and I hope we'll be able to change it and make it much less reliable on PPEs. When you go in and get tested, you are consuming personal protective equipment, masks and gowns. Those are high priority for the healthcare workers who are taking care of people who have coronavirus disease. So what we don't want to do is to have a situation where we do have disparities in availability of PPEs now, and we're working hard to correct that. But currently today, we want to make sure that the people who are taking care of people with coronavirus disease do not endanger themselves because they don't have the personal elective medical and surgical procedures. You don't want to not ever do them, but for the time being, don't do them, because they also not only consume personal protective equipment, they may also consume some of the things like ventilators that you might need. So let's pull in this together and we will get through it. I promise you. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, Mr. President, Mr. Vice President. FEMA is now leading the federal operation, or the federal response for all operations on behalf of the White House Coronavirus Task Force, who oversees this whole of nation response. HHS will continue to provide their matter expertise on health, and pursuant to the nationwide emergency declaration, FEMA, in coordination with HHS, is assisting state, local, tribal, territorial governments and their other eligible entities with health and safety emergency protective measures on behalf of the American public. As of yesterday, 50 states, the District of Columbia, 5 territories, and 1 tribe are working directly with FEMA under the nationwide emergency declaration for COVID-19. In just 24 hours, we've obligated $100 million to states, territories, and tribes. A little bit about supplies. It is of the utmost importance that requests for assistance, especially for critical supplies, get routed through proper channels as soon as possible. And we ask everyone to follow the normal procedures FEMA uses in a natural disaster. There's no different procedure for the COVID-19 pandemic. But remember, you can still order supplies from your regular vendors and buy it on the open market. Buy it where you can find it. We will reimburse you. If you buy medical supplies from foreign sources, it is reimbursable. Buy America does not apply to the Stafford Act, except for Washington, D.C. and Puerto Rico. If you can't buy it on the open market, make a request through the FEMA system. Requests for assistance at the local and county levels should first go to states, from states to the regional FEMA offices, and then from those offices right here in DC, where the National Response Coordination Center is open and running. We are getting requests for masks, PPE, swab sets, test site supports, ventilators, hospital capacity assessments, and many more. We are in lockstep with HHS to answer these requests, but we will do whatever is necessary to get states, tribes, territories, and others what they need. And then finally, what we are doing here in Washington, D.C., again, this is a whole of government response. Like all emergencies, response is most successful when it is locally executed, state managed, and federally supported. We can't say that enough. On Thursday, our federal partners fully integrated with our National Response Coordination Center, and additionally, all 10 FEMA regions across the country have been activated. The FEMA regional administrators will continue to coordinate closely with governors, state emergency managers, state public health officials to determine the type and level of support needed to respond to this dynamic threat.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Ed, please.
Well, thank you, Mr. President and Mr. Vice President, for your tireless leadership here. And I also want to thank the fellow task force members who've been working around the clock in a very patriotic way to serve their fellow Americans. You know, part of the American dream is having a home. And sometimes people say, well, what does housing have to do with health? It has everything to do with health, having a safe home. And that is for American citizens, single family forward mortgages, as well as reverse mortgages. And as you know, FHFA has also decided to do the same thing for 60 days. And the CFPB is very happy with all of this as well. And it's really all about helping our people, recognizing that they're being severely impacted by the coronavirus. And we've also asked the various servicers of mortgage loans to exercise. We cover all 8.5 million people in terms of the moratorium on foreclosures and evictions. We want also for the PHAs to be protected. HUD does not have in Congress for the power to be able to actually enforce that. But the fact of the matter is most of the PHAs are run by people who actually care about other people. So we really haven't seen much of a problem there. We haven't seen much of a problem with forbearance and needing to try to force people to do it because they want to do it. People are stepping up and saying, what can we do to be helpful? The advocates for low-income housing, as well as other stakeholders, to make sure that we're doing things that are most helpful to them. And additionally, we've extended the deadlines for healthcare and multifamily financial reporting requirements. And that's for over 20,000 multifamily and healthcare borrowers until April the 30th. And that provides them with a lot more flexibility to deal with the issues that they're dealing with. I also want to thank our FHA Commissioner Bryant Montgomery, as well as the FHFA Director Mark Calabria, and Kathy Kraninger, the Director of the CFPB, who've all worked tirelessly with us to make this happen. What we're trying to do is bridge the gap, recognizing that it's a lot easier for us to take these measures and for Congress to take the measures that they're taking so that we don't destroy a very excellent system and have to start all over again. So for those who are worried about the money that's being spent, if you don't spend the money and deal with this now, it's going to cost a whole lot more to try to build all this up again. And as was mentioned by the president, there's been a sense of unity that we haven't seen for a long time in this country. And let's hope and pray that that unity lasts far beyond this crisis.
Ben, thank you very much. Your questions, please.
Mr. President, a few questions if you don't mind, sir. If you've lost your job now, or you're worried that you're going to lose your job tomorrow, restaurant, something like that, what do you want people to do immediately? Second question, sir. You heard from the Vice President that he's going to be tested. Have you taken a test since last Saturday? I know you told us.
just took one.
You just took one. How you feeling?
Great.
Okay. I guess we'll.
I hope I look good.
It's like you're more than one.
Those people are going
took the one, sir? Sorry, hold on. Yeah. So,
to
okay, so for those people that have lost their job already, or they are worried that they're about to lose it tomorrow, what do you want them to do?
because we think we're going to have a tremendous bounce back. Now, some people agree with that very strongly. Some of our top economists, they think we're going to have once we solve the problem that we're working on, the medical problem. So we want them to keep their jobs, stay where you are, and we'll see what happens. Now, if they don't, we have unemployment, we have checks, we have a lot of things happening, a lot of very positive things. Nobody has ever done. Now, this is working with Democrats, as Republicans and Democrats, and myself working together. Nobody's ever done a package like this. It's a great package, but ideally we want them to be able to keep their jobs, keep the pay coming, and I think that's going to happen. Kelly, go ahead.
Mr. President, on your Defense Production Act power, one of the features of that is that the federal government would be able to control the output, whether it's masks or from governors. They can't find supplies, and prices have gone up. So you've talked about the act, sir, but you have not yet compelled any companies. Why not?
Because we have so many companies making so many products, every product that you mentioned, plus ventilators and everything else. We have car companies without having to use the act. If we don't have to use specifically, we have the act to use in case we need it. But we have so many things being made right now by so many, they've just stepped up. In fact, Mike Pence and I were discussing it before. We've never seen anything like it, where they are volunteering. We want to make masks. We're not like Hanes. I brought that up as an example. General Motors, I bring that up as another. Ford,
Market, sir, right?
they're going to go on the open market. We want them on the open market from the standpoint of pricing, because otherwise, it's going to be, we could be very unfairly
Direct them to the places in greatest need.
We are directing states, and sometimes we'll be competing against states, which I don't want, and we'll drop out of the bidding. We want the states to go first. And you know what we're doing is we're helping states. That's what we want to do. Same thing with the testing. We're helping states. We're helping states get to where they want. And we've made tremendous progress in every aspect of it.
This happens for a
It's
governor
happening
that needs
fast.
equipment.
Wrong at the beginning. You said something. We are going to be going over to the Hill. Are you going yourself?
My people are, and I'll be staying here. I'll be in the Oval Office and various.
You're asking Congress to essentially pass a series of legislation that's around to about $2 trillion, 10% of the GDP. What do you say to members in both parties who say this is too expensive, this is just too much to debate and get done in 48 hours or so? And also, have you spoken directly with Speaker Pelosi at all about any of this?
Okay, so I've spoken with, I'm not going to want people not to work. It's always, you want to create incentive to work. We're creating not an incentive not to work, but the fact is we're asking people not to work because of, we have to stay away from each other. If we're going to kill this horrible hidden enemy, we have to stay away. So there's never been a thing like this in the history of the world. Other nations are doing similar things, some effectively, some not effectively. They're doing similar things. We are creating a package that's going to keep companies together. Exactly what we know, the medical problem. We want to have this whole incredible situation that it can start right away. Not that all these companies break up, all the workers are out of jobs. You can't put them back together, and it would take years to put them back together. Because we had the greatest economy in the history of the world until we got hit by this problem. And we can be back very, very quickly. And it's our intention to be back very, very quickly. So we're doing a package, the likes of which nobody's ever done before. I'm obviously the one that has to approve the different things and the recommendations of the different things. And like buybacks as an example, and stock buybacks, I didn't like it the first time, and this time I'm saying, you're not doing it. I don't want money to be used for that. I want money to be used for workers and for opening businesses, keeping businesses, so not buybacks. And well, I am strongly recommending a buyback exclusion. You cannot buy back your stock. You can't take $1 billion of the money and just buy back your stock and increase the value. Please.
On the subject of masks, the vice president announced HHS was ordering hundreds of millions of them. Was that order just placed today? How is that going to be distributed, and when can doctors and nurses expect to actually receive those masks?
Yeah, HHS is completing a $500 million order of N95 masks, and all of this is being coordinated through FEMA, and we are responding specifically to state. They have contracted coronavirus, have the protection to keep themselves and their families healthy. But I want to emphasize the supply of so-called N95 masks has been vastly increased in the country because the president insisted that we extend liability protection to industrial masks. What all the experts told us early on was that industrial masks that are used on construction sites, the president's very familiar with from his past life, are perfectly appropriate to protect healthcare workers from respiratory illness. But they didn't have the liability protection because they weren't created for hospitals. We worked with leaders in both parties. We added that protection that runs through 2024, that now the industrial N95 masks can be purchased by hospitals, purchased by states, purchased by HHS, and distributed through our system. So we're making those available. The supply has been, as I said, vastly increased, and it was another step forward in a bipartisan accomplishment. And we're continuing to use all the kind of creative means of American industry to make sure that we're leaning into this effort, and that we do whatever it takes to make sure that our healthcare providers have the protective
We are
equipment.
still hearing from doctors and nurses about this shortage. When exactly can they expect to receive these masks, though?
Well, let me let Pete Gaynor speak to that, because FEMA will be, HHS is now fully integrated into FEMA. And so as the requests come in, but obviously, as I'm sure the administrator will say, they're being prioritized to those areas with the highest need.
So within the National Coordination Center, we have a supply chain task force. And in basic sense, we're trying to identify the universe of what's out there. So whether we hold it at the federal level, we hold it in the private sector, and then match that up with demand and asking people to be creative. We're asking, again, this is a shared responsibility. We're asking locals and states to do your share locally, try to take a little bit of burden off of us, and then we'll prioritize those scarce resources, because every single governor across the country is looking for the exact same thing. So there's a balance, but we're examining the entire supply chain to make sure that we make
masks start coming in.
they're out there now. So again, we want to match. We want to get out of the middle, I think.
That's what I like.
So we're trying to match suppliers with demand. So that's what we're doing right now. It's happening today.
They can expect them to do the matching supply and demand.
There's a range of requests across the country, and we're trying to match those again, supply and demand every day.
Through the task force.
We had a lot have already come in. I have to tell you, the throwing away of the mask, being in private business, the throwing away of the mask right away, they're thrown away. And when you hear 55 million masks were ordered, I'm saying 55 million, how could it possibly be such a number? And they say, oh, that's just a small fraction of what we need. And I said, why aren't we sanitizing masks? You know, you look at the masks, I've looked at all the different masks. Some don't lend themselves to doing that, I think, but many do. And I said, why aren't we have very good liquids for doing this, sanitizing the masks. And that's something they're starting to do more and more. They're sanitizing the masks. And I don't know if anybody would like to speak to that.
There are CDC guidances about how you can minimize the use of masks by different things that you could do with testing, and when you have masks, how you might reuse them, which ones you can reuse them.
Do you think there's a solution to this other than buying more masks? Do healthcare providers need to change how they're using them?
Yeah, well, there are a couple of things. One, for example, we are moving towards getting testing, but you don't have to have PPE. I mean, I'm not going to tell you is going to be there. It's going to be a swab that you can stick in the nose of the person who is either infected or not, but that person doesn't need PPE, the person who's administering the test. So if you could do a self-administered test, stick it in a vial, hand it over, you don't need a mask, you don't need PPE. That's one of the things we're trying to do.
I would have liked that much better. Personally, yeah, go ahead.
May I? And this is another story about great American industry. The president and I literally heard directly from Apple that they're donating 2 million industrial masks to this effort around the country,
Yes.
and working with our administration to distribute those. If you've got 100 of them, if you've got 10,000 of them, is to load them up, drive them over to your local hospital. That story is literally happening all over the country. And now with more Americans stepping away from elective surgery, including elective dental care, we're urging dentists around America to look at their supplies of N95 masks and make those available to our hospitals. But the great news is the president said, the American people are all doing this now. So allow me to say on behalf of the president, thank you for what you all are doing today. We want to encourage people in business, encourage people in dentistry in particular. Look at those supplies of N95 masks. Pack up as many as you can spare. Drop them off at your local hospital. It'll be a great service to the country.
Mr. President, I just want to read you some of the doctors on the front lines of this crisis are saying.
The ones that are saying good things or bad?
These are doctors who are talking about the shortage of medical supplies that they are facing. Dr. Faiza Bucks in Kentucky says there's absolutely no way to protect myself. A surgeon in Fresno, California says we are at war with no ammo. Dr. Mel in Illinois says if this is a wartime situation, then now is the time to act. I know you're talking now about increasing production at so many of these facilities to get the masks out, but given that this is one of the wealthiest, most powerful countries in the world, should this even be happening? Shouldn't this have been resolved weeks ago?
I'll tell you the way I look at it. So many administrations preceded me. For the most part, they did very little in terms of what you're talking about. This is unprecedented. You can speak to Tony, you can speak to anybody. This is unprecedented or just about unprecedented. As time goes by, we're seeing it's really at a level that nobody would have believed, nobody would have thought possible that this could happen. And we are making much of this stuff now, and much of it's being delivered now. We've also gotten tremendous reviews from a lot of people that can't believe how fast it's coming. I mean, when I hear they have an order of 55 million masks, and that's just one order, that's one order out of many, and that there are many millions of masks beyond that, and I keep saying, how is it possible to use so much? But that's the way it is. And part of that is because they'll use a mask for a short period of time and they throw it. The fact is that we are doing a tremendous amount. We started with very few masks. We had some, but nothing for an event like this. And now we're making tens of millions of masks and other things. And I think it's unprecedented what we've done and what we're doing. And many doctors, and I've read many doctors, they can't believe the great job that we've done. Yes, Kelly, did you have?
It's been nearly 3 months since your administration learned about this virus.
Well, if you remember, I was the one that closed the country down. I was the one that closed the. You don't write that, or you don't say it too much. Certainly on CNN. But I just read an article yesterday. That by closing the country down so early, very early, we saved tens of thousands and much more than that lives. So. You might want to report that too.
I'd just like to address that for a moment. Again, I'm an ICU physician, ran health systems, and I first of all want to thank everyone who's on the front line in the emergency room, in the ICUs, in the hospitals. I speak to my colleagues daily. We need to preserve our PPE to the degree that we can. CDC guidelines has had that. The president has talked about it. But I also want to say we are making product, as the president said, but we are also responding through the FEMA system to distribute the strategic national stockpile resources according to requests that come in. Stockpile has been distributed to many states, first orders, second orders, and on a daily basis adjudicating that. If there are shortages in your hospital,
hospitals talking about the shortages.
We were on the phone 2 nights ago or 3 nights ago with over 2,000
hospitals or hospital systems sharing best practices from Seattle, where they've been very innovative, pioneering some of these areas. When there is a shortage, they need to go through their emergency management. It goes directly up to the FEMA system, which really rocks. It really works very, very well. And then there's a distribution of the stockpile. Now, the stockpile isn't infinite. That's why it's being replaced by all the orders. But mask supplies go out on a daily basis as they are needed and requested through the FEMA system. I don't know, Administrator Gaynor, whether you want to add to that.
Just to reiterate what Brett said, we don't take lightly what you just read. I get the calls every night, the way you get emails. It's a serious issue. We don't want that to happen, but it is happening. You're not making things up. I know that because I'm experiencing myself. But what you just heard about the different avenues, some of which aren't even recognized, about how you can get help through the FEMA process, in addition to the large amounts of additional PPE that's coming into the system, we hope that very, very, very soon we're not going to get those kinds of real life difficulties.
There's a question about the timeline here, and even FEMA can't quite answer what the timeline is. Days, weeks.
Yeah. Sooner than weeks. It's going to be days. I would hope. We're going to try to make it days to the best possible way we can.
And again, what we're doing is we're trying to help the states get things faster. And that's what we're doing. We're implementing. And the magnitude of this, it's a tragedy. It's an absolute tragedy. But the magnitude is something that no matter who you were, no matter where you come from, nobody ever thought a thing like this could happen. You read about it comes back, and it's too bad. But I think the people working on this have been incredible. The job they've done has really been incredible. But there's tremendous amounts of not only masks, of ventilators and respirators and everything you can think of. It's all being, much of it and almost, I could say all of it is being manufactured right now. Steve, please.
Yesterday there were questions about the use of this malaria drug. Have those questions now been resolved?
Well, I don't know that resolved. I could say that it's going to be distributed. I know New York is getting, I think, 10,000 units and numerous other people. It's really, it could be the malaria drug plus the Z-Pack. But, and we're going to find out. We're going to find out. I feel, as the expression goes, what do we have to lose? Because, I feel very good about it. Tony would feel, like he'd like samples done in a certain way, and I understand that too. Like many doctors agree with that. We don't have much time. We have a lot of very sick people right now in hospitals all over the place. And speaking with the governor of New York, Cuomo, I said, how's it look? He's got a lot of sick people. So we're going to be delivering a lot of samples to New York and other places, and we're going to find out very shortly whether or not it's going to work. I feel very confident. I mean, I've seen things that surprise me, frankly. There are, as Tony said, there are other things we're looking at too. Vaccine, of course, is incredible, but this is more immediate. Right now, this to me would be the greatest thing that could happen. This would be a gift from heaven. This would be a gift from God if it works. So we're going to pray to God that it does work. It'd be a fantastic thing.
Mr. President,
Please, Rebecca.
Mr. President, on the economic front, there are reports that the coronavirus is really hurting your businesses, especially your hotels.
My businesses?
Yeah,
Sure.
so is that true, and can you speak
Well, I
to
wouldn't say
financials?
it's thriving when you decide to close down your hotels and your businesses. No, I would say, but I'm very underlevered and everything, so that's good. But is it hurting yeah, it's hurting me, and it's hurting Hilton, and it's hurting all of the great hotel chains all over the world. It's hurting everybody. I mean, there are very few businesses that are doing well. Now, there are some that are, like, as an example, the Walmarts of the world, because everybody...
Talk to anyone at the Trump Organization about the potential effects of the coronavirus?
No, I didn't speak to anybody. I speak to my sons, but I talk about the coronavirus, but not as it pertains to my business. They basically follow the rules. When they say close them down in New York, we close them down, or wherever they may be. I actually had planned at Mar-a-Lago, but right now I think Mar-a-Lago, I guess, I haven't even asked, but I imagine that's closed down just like a lot of other businesses in Florida. The government assistance would be for what I have. I have hotels. Everybody knew I had hotels when I got elected. They knew I was a successful person when I got elected. So it's one of those things. I guess I get paid $450,000 a year. I give it up. I put it back into the nation. I have to, by the way, you have to designate where you want it. So I oftentimes give it to opioid, research and things. But as far as the hotels and everything, I mean, I have to do what everyone else is doing. I would probably decide to close things up. I think it's a good thing. You don't want people getting together, and hotels and clubs and everything, you get together. We want to beat this deal. So I have many of them, hotels, clubs, things like that, where people get together. I would think it would be a good practice to close them up. Go ahead, please.
Mr. President, as you know, we've been talking a lot about masks. We've also talked about how not everyone needs to take a test. What about a temperature test? As we know, we all came into this room and got tested before we entered.
Well, I do it. I have temperature tests. And I didn't ask everybody here, but I wouldn't be surprised if they had temperature tests.
Should those thermometers
Otherwise, I'm going to run off the stage.
be distributed? Should they be on a mass distribution basis too?
Oh, I think they are pretty much. The easiest thing is the temperature. I think they are. I don't know. Are you learning a lot from the temperature test, Tony? Could you maybe discuss that for a second?
Yeah, I mean, they have a place. They're not infallible. I mean, there's so many ways to get around that. I mean, right now, every time, certainly here, every time I go into a different room, I get my temperature taken. But we see that on the outside that some people are doing.
I took his temperature.
It was very low. There is a role for it under certain circumstances. What I don't see is a massive distribution of thermometers that are going to actually have a major impact on what I showed, what we need to do.
And I've seen things when Tony mentions thermometers. They aim something at your forehead. They stay this far away, boom, and they tell you what your temperature is. I said, I've never seen that before. I've learned a lot. It's incredible. Go ahead, back corner.
Pellegrino with OEM, thank you. This morning, the Washington Post ran a story suggesting that you delayed taking action on the virus in January and February. Dr. Fauci is
Such a nice question. No, I think the Washington Post covers me very inaccurately. I saw the story. I think it's a disgrace. From many people, I get a lot of credit for having closed our country very early to a very heavily infected country. China, unfortunately, China. I wish China would have told us more about what was going on in China long prior to us reading about it, even though the news isn't exactly disseminated. As you know, China kicked the Washington Post out of China, and they kicked the New York Times out of China, and I guess the Wall Street Journal. That's okay. I mean, that's what they do, and I think it's a terrible thing they did. But I also think it's terrible when people write inaccurately about you, and they write inaccurately about me every single day, every single hour. And by the way, your group really, I really think, and I just say fair, not good or bad. I think you write very fairly and do very fair reports about the great job that all of us are doing, that this group behind me is doing. It's so insulting when they write phony stories that they know are fake news. Because they're not insulting me, they're insulting everybody, these incredible people that have worked so hard, so long, that are thinking about nothing other than this invisible enemy. They have done such an incredible job, and they will continue, and we're going to win, and there'll be a lot of celebration when we win. And we're going to win with as few lives lost as possible. That's the game. Win with as few lives lost as possible. It's a tough enemy. It's a tough killer. Far bigger, far more vicious than ever before. But I appreciate you saying it, because the fact that we closed so early to China, and most people, hey, look, I was called xenophobic by Sleepy Joe Biden. I was called a racist by Democrats, a racist. I was a racist because I decided that I didn't want to have people that could hurt our country come in. And saving of those many weeks was a tremendous thing. And when they keep talking about acting early, that was the ultimate act. That was the biggest act. We didn't. And then I also closed Europe early, very early. I took a lot of heat for that too, but that was a good thing. Now they're doing similar things that we're doing. So I didn't act late. I acted early. I acted far before anybody thought I should be. I took tremendous criticism from the various papers, from many of the papers. So I very much appreciate the question. It might have been more of a statement than a question, but whatever it may have been, I appreciate it very much.
Mr. President, about this time, so a number of the states have kind of done these different measures. We've seen California order one
Yes.
thing, New York, just similar. Do you want all of the states to do one uniform?
No, they can do what they want to do. If California can get a mask sooner than we can get it for them, through all of the things we're able to do, but we're going to end up with a big oversupply at some point. At some point, this is going away, and we're going to end up with a big oversupply. And you know what? In this case, that's going to be okay. But if Gavin can go out and order gowns faster, or masks, good masks faster, or other things faster, that's good. We do have a lot of the coordination with the ships that we're sending in, as you know, the medical ships that we're sending in, and even cruise liners. We're going to be sending in probably cruise liners into some areas, in particular California and in particular New York. But if somebody can do something faster, if they can order that mask faster than us, I want them to be able to do it.
About the rules, sir, so people can't leave their homes. Certain businesses.
We coordinate very much with them.
You don't want all those to be the same.
Well, it doesn't have to be at this moment, because we have places in the country where, states where they have 2 people or 3 people, and those people are in quarantine. And you can't put on them what you're putting in New York, where you do have a tremendous problem. I mean, we have large portions of the country, Middle America, where, they have a few people. So it may be a time, I hope that never happens, where we need to take very drastic action. But right now, that's not in the same ballpark. Yeah, go ahead, please.
We're day 6 into your 15 days of recommendations.
Yes.
A lot of people are following them. Some people are not.
Yeah.
Do you think the American people are doing enough right now to slow the
I
spread
think
of
they
the
are,
virus?
and some people are not, but I think they are. I think it's going to have a very profound effect. I mean, we'll know a little bit more on day 14 and 15. We'll see. Well, we're going to see. We have to see what the result is. We want to flatten that out, and we're going to see what the result is. And I just want to say, I'm going to negotiate a very large transaction, and I've been negotiating it for 2 days. So I'm going to take 1 or 2 more questions, and then I'm going to leave it to Vice President Pence on the Hill, with the Hill, the various element and the difficulty of that. And he's a very good friend of mine. You take a look at Shinzo Abe. He's a great gentleman. He loves his country. We have an incredible relation. We just finished a trade deal with them, $40 billion trade deal with Japan. And Prime Minister Abe has a big decision to make. They have built one of the most beautiful venues I've ever seen. They're all ready to go. It's not late. It's not over budget. It was just done flawlessly, and it's beautiful. And they're sitting back and saying, I told him, I said, that's your decision. And it is his decision. And I know he's going to make it soon. I don't know what it's going to be. And I didn't think I should be influencing it at all. I mean, the job that Japan has done on that venue is incredible. So, I mean, there are options, obviously, including delay and maybe delay for next year, but that's totally up to them. We'll see what they do.
Since this story keeps popping up, when did you first learn that this was going to be a problem?
Well, when I learned, I started doing the closings. So, probably around that time. We didn't learn much. I think you're going to ask a little bit about China responsibility. I do think that, again, I have great respect. They could have told us earlier about what was going on inside. We didn't know about it until it started coming out publicly. But I wish they could have told us earlier because we could have come up with a solution. Tony Fauci and all of the people, the talent that we have, would have loved to have had 3 or 4 months of additional time if you knew that this was going to be happening. They didn't have that time. They read about it in newspapers like everybody else. China was very secretive, okay? Very, very secretive. And that's unfortunate. With that, I have great respect for that country. I have great respect for the leader of that country. And like it, he's a friend of mine. But I wish they would have told us earlier, Steve, that they were having a problem, because they were having a big problem and they knew it. And I wish they could have given us an advance warning, because we could have had a lot of things. As an example, some of the things that we're talking about where we order them as quickly as we can. If we had a 2 or 3 month difference in time, it would have been much better. Yeah, please.
Can I follow up on that? Because as you were saying, China was extremely secretive about this. Several of your advisors have been warning, have been critical of China. Secretary Pompeo was talking about it yesterday, and he had been saying so for quite some time. So by then, on January 24th, did you tweet that China has been working very hard to contain the coronavirus, that the United States greatly appreciates their efforts and transparency?
Because
It will
it's
all
true.
work out well.
Because
Why would
it's
you
true.
say that?
China has worked very hard. China has lost thousands and
You said they
thousands
were
of people.
transparent, right?
No, they weren't transparent. They were transparent at that time. But when we saw what happened, they could have been transparent much earlier than they
A
were.
month after
But
China,
China, just so you understand, China is not a beneficiary here. China has lost thousands and thousands of people. China has gone through hell over this. They've gone through hell. And I've had conversations with President Xi. I just wish they could have told us earlier. They knew they had a problem earlier. I wish they could have said that.
Are you able to share, thank you for the numbers on the testing, by the way, are you able to share any other hard numbers on number of available tests, on number of ventilators in the federal stockpile?
Well, I'm going to leave that.
They're due for delivery in 18
Not
months.
billion. No, not billion.
500 million masks, excuse me, thank you.
I said, wait a
The
minute.
half a billion masks, but they're due for delivery according to HHS within 18 months. The last number on ventilators we had was 12 to 13,000. Can you give us an updated number?
Well, there's never been numbers like this. You know, a ventilator is a machine. It's a very complex machine. And to think that we have to order hundreds of thousands, nobody's ever heard of a thing like this. You know, when we had in the stockpile, we had thousands in a stockpile, thousands ready to go. That's a lot. All of a sudden, you need hundreds of thousands. And you're not talking about, you know, the mask is whether it's plastic or whether it's material. That's one thing. But you're talking about a very sophisticated, heavily computerized machine and delicate. And you need hundreds of thousands of them. Nobody's ever heard of a thing like that. With that being said, General Motors, Ford, so many companies, I had 3 calls yesterday directly. Without having to institute, like, you will do this, these companies are making them right now. But to think of these numbers, it's pretty mind-boggling.
Numbers to share though right now. Do you have numbers to share with us right now?
Well, Mike, go ahead, please.
Yeah, you bet. Well, we've spoken a lot about masks this morning, but the president's also given the task force a priority of assessing the availability and expanding the availability of ventilators. And on Monday, we will detail some very encouraging news for Americans. You speak about the number of 13,000. It is a little more than that we have in the national stockpile. But it's important to remember, it doesn't include what will be produced. As the president said, we're seeing companies step forward. The manufacturers tell us that a ventilator actually isn't a very complicated piece of equipment, and many of them are literally surging forward to create more ventilators. But one of the more exciting developments in the last week, which we'll detail more on Monday, is that in the president's engagement with our healthcare community, we learned that ventilators that are currently used by anesthesiologists, that are used in outpatient clinics and in other procedures, can be converted to be used as ventilators for people struggling with the effects of the coronavirus. We've confirmed that a particular screen in that device can be changed readily. We're working with the FDA to approve that. But again, it's a great testament of the American people and our healthcare professionals who are serving in healthcare around America have the support they need, that our patients that are struggling with recovering from coronavirus have the equipment they need. And we'll have a lot of detail on Monday as we continue to assess
Once we have 1.4 million tests on board, do we have that? Can you give us the number that we have?
Let me let Abigail speak to that.
So I'm going to answer your question and then try to persuade you to stop asking about a specific number, okay? So from March 2nd to March 14th, we have put over 10 million laboratory tests into the U.S. commercial market, and we expect that by March 28th to be well over 27 million into the market. So that answers your question, and let me tell you why it's not the right question. Not every lab can run every test. Not every test is completely self-contained. So the more important question is not how many tests are in the market. We got them in the market, but is to make sure that every segment of the market has the kind of test that they can use.
your numbers, trying to find out for the public if the things you've promised are happening.
Yes, they are happening. They are absolutely. We promised 1 or 4 million. There's 10 million tests in the market
And
now.
are the masks that are in the strategic reserve being deployed, Mr. Vice President?
Yes, the masks in the strategic national stockpile.
So it's not 13,000 anymore. It would be a lower number. Would that be fair to say?
Masks are.
No, the ventilators.
Then-
I'm sorry, the respirators. Thank you. We're trying to understand if the things we have been told sitting through these briefings for many days are happening and getting into the hands of the healthcare providers.
You understand it. You understand it. You're an intelligent woman, Kelly. You understand exactly what he's saying. And what he's saying is rather incredible because we inherited an obsolete, broken system. And when you hear the number of tests that we'll be providing and are now, it's incredible. And I've heard a lot of governors say the same thing. We took over an obsolete, broken testing system that wouldn't have worked for even a small problem, let alone one of the biggest pandemics in history. And what these gentlemen have done is incredible. I am going now to negotiate a great deal for our workers and our citizens. I'll be back tomorrow. We're probably doing this tomorrow. And if I might, I'd like to ask Vice President Pence to take over. And thank you all very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you all. Sorry, Mr.
How about Mayor Becky?
The military has sent planes to Honduras, Morocco, and Peru to pick up Americans and bring them home who have been stranded there. But there's still a lot of other Americans who are stranded and can't get home. So does the military plan to send planes to pick those folks up? Where will those planes be going? When will they be going? Can you assure Americans that who are stranded in foreign countries that they will be able to get home?
Okay, guys, I'm not going to stream this all day. This is going to go all the time. I wanted to see if there was any other big breaking news or anything that was happening that I felt that was pertinent to what I was trying to show you guys. But while we were live, it just broke that Italy has now 793 deaths in the last 24 hours. So brutal numbers, absolutely brutal numbers in Italy. The world needs to take this very seriously. You do not want to be one of those people that gets this. Yes, you might be fine, but what happens if you're not? And you end up in a hospital bed. You don't want this. So stay home, stay safe, wash your hands. We've been reporting on this now. I've been reporting on this now for 2 months. I remember talking to Amanda from Indonesia, and when we were talking, we said it would be in Indonesia, and people said we were crazy. And then I remember even a month ago, people were saying that Indonesia was the Holy Land and a massive outbreak because they were in denial. They didn't do what they were supposed to do to stop the spread of this virus, which was go inside, tell the people this is serious, keep everybody apart, social distancing. They didn't do that until it was too late. Now, people are dying. People are sick all over the place. Same issues happening in Canada. Same issues happening in the United States. Same issues happening in Italy. Same issues happening in China. Same issues happening in Iran. Same issues happening in Spain. It's happening in lots of countries. And it's only going to get worse before it gets better. Apparently, China is saying it is getting better based on what they are reporting. We have no idea if those numbers are real, if it's true. And if it is true, why are we not learning from them? Amanda's fine. She isolated herself a long time ago, knowing, as we talked about it, that this was going to spread, which it has. So she was 100% correct. I was 100% correct when I predicted that this was going to get worse before it got better. Everywhere. And it was fun. So we already knew there was cases in Indonesia. And I asked Amanda, are there Asian people from China and Indonesia? She goes, tons. I'm like, well, you guys have it there then. It's just spreading. Everyone's just in denial. This is what we got. 186 countries now. 186 countries. Thank you guys for the likes. Stay safe. Self-isolate. I'm going to be coming live actually pretty soon. We have a trading academy. I am part of a trading academy. I am a Platinum 600, working on being a Platinum 1000. I am making residual income. I do get paid in Bitcoin. And I'd love to teach you guys how you can learn about trading and take your trading game up to the next level from home while everybody in the world is staying home. Why not learn a new skill? Why not make money while you're home? Why not learn to trade? Because the markets are not closing. Learn about the Trading Academy. Anyone would like to learn about trading? Anybody would like to learn more about Forex and other investing ideas? I'll be live in about half an hour. Thank you guys for all your support. Have a great weekend. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys. Without you guys, none of this is possible. Stay safe. Wash your hands. Self-isolate. And social distancing. 6 feet apart. Stay safe, everybody. This is your boy Rich from Rich to Be Live. And I'm out. Peace.